Here's to you. What do we got? We got 25 minutes. We got 25 minutes here. How much can I cram into 25 minutes? You'd be surprised how much I can cram into 25 minutes, particularly when I just go with the stream of consciousness, all extemporaneous, so I will not be addressing any questions at this time. Q&A on everything I say that you catch right now. I'm going to actually put this on my timeline, maybe even pin this little 30-minute tutorial here. Any questions anybody has on it, share it out, and then people might come over and catch us live tonight on YouTube, MAGA Coalition channel, 10 p.m. tonight. We'll be taking questions, and I will answer on these issues as they go. So let's cover what's going on today real quickly. What you're watching right now is you're probably confused because 75% of the American population probably doesn't even know what the House Rules Committee is, what it does. It is basically the gateway committee for all legislation as it makes its way to the floor. There are technical markups that occur in Rules Committee. It is generally not this much fanfare concentrated on it. So what you saw today was Chairman McGovern exchanging pleasantries with Tom Cole of Oklahoma, the minority chair of Rules, which they are just kind of trying to take some of the poison out of the well that exists between Devin Nunes, Adam Schiff, and Doug Collins and Jerry Nadler. Nadler was not there today to speak on behalf of his committee, quote-unquote family emergency. I think it's more like he has limited cognition. He is not able to answer questions in a serious fashion or in a fashion without serious assistance from his staff. Therefore, Doug Collins was going up against Raskins and, lamenting some of the things that were done during the Judiciary Committee. You were kind of probably hearing about this so-called minority hearing day. So what essentially happened was, according to the House rules that were not amended in House Resolution 660, they forgot to do it. Imagine that, the Dems forgot to override a certain clause in the House rules which allows a minority day where they call the witnesses, and it is scheduled by the majority on behalf of the minority. Nadler did not take too kindly to Collins' request for a minority day. He overruled it, claiming that he can abide by that at any time. So essentially what Nadler is saying is he's going to have a minority day on impeachment articles that are already voted out of his committee sometime at a later date, which of course is ridiculous because, why are you going to lock the barn door when the house or the horse is already out running around? So we've got that little thing that you probably are wondering what you're hearing about today. The other reason the House Rules Committee is important in this process is they're defining how long we're going to debate. They're going to define the limitations on how many members get to speak by virtue of limiting the number of hours of debate that are going to be given. And what we're hearing is 4 hours, roughly 4 hours. That may go to 5 with a little more debate. They will reconvene shortly. So what's the holdup today? Well, the holdup is the House is also trying to vote authorization bills so that the government doesn't shut down. So we've got spending bills flying around. We've got authorization bills. We've got a defense bill in the Senate, and the House has a bunch of things they have to do so we don't shut the government down before they leave for Christmas. So we've got all these things going on. But essentially, the House Rules Committee will get back together, and if you're really bored, you might want to just watch that as it reconvenes. They will discuss how long and what the parameters of debate are. When Clinton was impeached, they allowed basically 2 days of unleashed commentary on the House floor, which was meant to kind of bring the drama to the TV. That won't happen in this case. They want to truncate everything. I mean, obviously, everything the Democrats have done as far as impeachment is concerned is truncate it. Try to make it much shorter in duration. So then if that's the case, we have 4 hours of debate. They will occur late morning, probably lunch to 4 or 5 p.m. when the votes occur. So if you're curious, yes, Trump will likely be on stage in Michigan after He is officially impeached within hours, which is pretty interesting. We'll see what he does with that. Certainly on the heels of some powerful economic numbers that are still coming in. So this will be an interesting dichotomy watching President Trump in Michigan. Very fitting that he was here after the Judiciary Committee basically impeached, sent the articles through. He was here in Hershey, had a successful rally here, and then now he will be in Michigan, another key state, as they impeach him officially on the House floor. I still anticipate another 5 or 6 House defections on the Democrat side. I have not heard whether that's definitive. I have heard there's a lot of horse trading going on with House leadership to see which Democrats will be able to vote no on one and yes on another. So there will be, I contend there will be some flipping and flopping, but for the most part, we know they have the votes. There's been some reports that people were trying to report yesterday that the reason why this is taking longer than anticipated is that the Democrats don't have the votes to get it to deploy. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. We never would have moved forward with this process, if they didn't have it or it was a question or anything like that. So that's what's going on in the House rules now. If you caught a little bit of the press conference yesterday with Chuck Schumer, basically says, he wants particular witnesses called, not other witnesses that would open door to conspiracy theory. He wants 4 specific witnesses that are directly related to either the Bolton office and the Mulvaney office, and he's saying we don't need any other witnesses, and of course this is not how anything works. And just to remind everybody that the majority in the Senate will be ironclad, led forward by Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell has signaled, as I told you he would, that he will work with the White House lawyers on how things will work. So it'll work very much similar to 1999. And just to rehash 1999 a little bit for you on the Senate rules side, the Senate rules subsist of 26 rules that were put in place in 1868 upon the impeachment of Andrew Johnson. They have been amended one time, to my knowledge, in 1986, which is smartly disallowed the House to conflate too many charges under one single article of impeachment, making it much more difficult to just throw all the spaghetti strands against the wall and see what sticks and put them under one article. That is no longer allowed as of 1986. Therefore, the House not being able to adopt anything out of the Mueller report and try an obstruction of justice, because they would have had to itemize the specific obstructions of justice, and it had one not met the merit, then the not guilty would be required upon the whole article. So that is why they have chosen to go with the ridiculous obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. These are just so nebulous that we don't get into the weeds there. So but in addition to those 26 rules, they then do 1 or 2 resolutions that will be submitted to the floor, and they're voted to discuss how the procedures will work, whether or not witnesses will be called, and things of that nature, and how long they expect the trial to last. That type of thing can all be itemized prior to the trial getting started. That, I expect, will be an ironclad 53-47 vote in favor of whatever it is we want. There's a lot of speculation that Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, or Lamar Alexander, or Cory Gardner could jump, and it would take 4 senators. It is true, it would take 4 senators to jump in bed with Chuck Schumer and demand a couple of witnesses by name, and that would be out of Mitch McConnell's hands. But you have to understand why this stuff doesn't happen, and why Lamar Alexander, Cory Gardner, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, while they do not like the president, while in some cases hate the president, would enjoy seeing him squirm, they are not going to jump out of line, because in doing so, they put way too much pressure on some of their colleagues, particularly Tom Tillis and McSally and Joni Ernst. So we've got these, even if Susan Collins feels she needs to split the baby in Maine, she may vote one article and against another. It doesn't matter. I really don't care. As long as that number doesn't exceed 50, I could give 2 shits if somebody wants, like Mitt Romney or Lamar Alexander, want to break rank and vote on obstruction or abuse. I really don't give a shit. Doesn't matter. You're never going to get to the 67 number. Doesn't matter. No, there is no 2/3 of members present. Again, another famous or infamous conspiracy that's being floated around by some people is that the 2/3 present delineated in the Constitution would somehow allow certain senators to stay home, lowering the threshold required to successfully remove the president from office. That's ridiculous. That would never happen. Any vote that one member could not make for any reason would be delayed by Mitch McConnell. Is entirely up to him. So my point is, the chances of any witnesses being called are about 5 to 10%. And if they are called, they will be called because the White House wants it called. But what will happen is you've seen Chuck Schumer's press conference where he says he wants these witnesses. Then you saw Mitch McConnell on the well of the Senate floor today. He did rather cheekily, as they say in the UK. He got a little cheeky with Schumer because Schumer, in his letter that was passed through the press to McConnell, he actually misquoted the constitutional responsibilities. The constitutional sole power to impeach rests under Article 1, Article 2 of the House, not Article 3, which is the Senate has sole power to try impeachments. So Chuck Schumer actually misquotes the Constitution, which is just, I mean, if you're an inside baseball fan, it's really hilarious. It's kind of like I don't know. It's just a real inside baseball thing when a Senate minority leader attempts to hijack a process and then misquotes the Constitution. He really undermines his own points, and of course Mitch McConnell doesn't miss too much. So that was pointed out today on the Senate floor. So anyway, all these conspiracy theories are nonsense. There is no chance whatsoever that those particular 4 witnesses will be called. A matter of fact, as we understand it, listening to Mitch McConnell today, there'll be no witnesses whatsoever called until both cases are heard. What this means is that the House will choose their managers, otherwise known as the prosecutors of this case. It looks to me at this point like Representative Raskins is going to take up one of the lead roles here. Jerry Nadler is probably not going to be anything more than a name-only participant. And, of course, Adam Schiff will probably be too scared to set foot in the Senate. So they will pick a couple of prosecutors. They will also probably add Justin Amash, a former Republican douchebag from Michigan. And don't take my word for it. Just talk to anybody in his district. He may, in fact, be added to the team of managers to prosecute the case in the Senate. Then, of course, we have our White House attorneys that will present the president's case. And that's the first time you're actually going to get to hear all the exculpatory evidence, including, I'm certain, sworn testimony on paper, anyway, attestations by Pompeo and Mulvaney that, under the threat of perjury, their statements would consist that they knew nothing of any extortion, bribery, abuse of power, or getting an exchange from for a meeting or military aid from Ukraine, anything in particular. So essentially, you'll just be piling on what the House Republicans have already successfully managed to do, which is make everybody question if anything really actually did happen, which, as we now know, nothing actually did happen. So the Senate process will begin when the articles are presented to the Senate. So this latest Larry Tribe, call him Larry because he doesn't like it, Lawrence Tribe, he's an insane, wacko, supposed constitutional lawyer, although I wouldn't know what country's constitution he is schooled in. He has floated the theory that the House could pass the articles of impeachment and then withhold them from the Senate in exchange for demanding these 4 witnesses or more, and somehow or another they would be able to extort the Senate into bending their process by holding articles of impeachment, which of course is nonsensical to the great degree that I couldn't even really articulate further on that, simply because it makes no sense, and why bother getting into the weeds of something so dumb. So, and if you see anybody kind of expounding on this, or even worse, extolling the virtue of marrying the Democrats to this idea, then chances are they too suffer from some type of limited cognition. I would ignore them. So eventually the House will pass these 2 articles. There will be, of the 30 members in the Trump districts and 16 who won in 18, I would imagine with about 5 or 6 might defect entirely. If not, then we'll see 10 or 12 or more go yes on one and no on another, and that's the way you'll see the numbers float consistently. Different members voting yes and no. So realistically, we're looking at tomorrow 4 hours of nonsensical debate from the Democrats saying they have no choice but to pass these articles of impeachment. And then, of course, we'll have, of that 4 hours, 2 hours will consist of select Republicans who are chosen to speak, and they will rail against this and prep the argument that nothing has changed. There are no more fact witnesses to call. Nothing happened. There was actually no investigation called in the Ukraine. There was nothing started. There was nothing promised. Anyway, I'm not going to go through all that again. So people who have any additional questions about the Senate impeachment rules, just go look them up. To say they're static is an understatement. There's 26 of them, I believe, and you can find them online, and they've been there since 1868. And if you have additional questions about procedures, I would, if I were you, Google the documents, the Senate Journal documents from 1999, where you can read, if you are so inclined, all of the procedures that were adopted, how they were adopted, and then you'll learn a lot. You won't have to listen to the likes of me. In my last 10 minutes or so here, I want to switch to the Flynn ruling that was issued by Judge Sullivan. I know there were a lot of people that were gravely misled by this suspension of the sentencing, and I really feel badly for these people, because there's a lot of internet rumors that have been swirling around for quite some time that this entire government case against Flynn was going to fall apart, particularly in light of facts that are emerging facts from the IG reports and such, and that, of course, has not happened. So if you read Judge Sullivan's ruling, it is, and I say without pleasure, it is brutal. It is everything I feared and more. From the switch that the general made to Sidney Powell and their legal strategy, it bombed. And I mean bombed as far as Judge Sullivan is concerned. It is a dangerous territory when a ruling like this consists of almost the judge choosing to berate or dress down the defendant's attorney through the defendant's name on paper, as opposed to doing it from the bench, which would be even more humiliating for Sidney Powell. But certainly, no additional information will be provided. According to Judge Sullivan, we may have some lapses even in performance of duty by his current legal team, and that was really rough. That was some paper-borne umbrage taken up by Judge Sullivan, who is known as a cranky old Reagan appointee. But boy, that was brutal. I took no pleasure. I don't know if people think that, like, simply because I've been saying this since at least July, that this is the way it's going to go down if Flynn doesn't just accept what the fate is. I don't take any pleasure in it. I'm sorry if you are a big Flynn person or you've been following this rabbit hole for a while, and I legitimately am sorry for anybody who, and particularly I'm sorry for General Flynn, because this was not a good idea, and it was a very, very strange legal maneuver. This is not a ruling in a trial. This was not anything where you have a whole lot of legal room to maneuver in the first place. We are discussing a sentencing phase of a guilty plea of which he accepted. So the limitations on that are so extreme that when you do sign that plea, you waive all rights to appeal unless it is directly due to insufficient representation from your lawyer, which is interesting because, I think Sidney Powell's an accomplished former U.S. attorney, but honestly, the only way forward here for Michael Flynn to appeal is to go to an appellate court and argue that Sidney Powell screwed him over by not representing him well enough. And in fact, as incredible as it sounds, it could be a pretty, it's very tough. That 99% of the time that never works, but that 1%, Judge Sullivan is setting him up for that by upbraiding his representation so strongly and questioning actually some ethical stuff in there in his ruling. It certainly gives pause to an appellate judge to say, was this individual actually represented sufficiently? So that's really ugly truth of this whole thing. So Michael Flynn will be sentenced. There will be no more delays. This will be next month, in about a month. And I expect that this term of whatever he must serve behind bars has been greatly exacerbated by all of the actions that have been taken over the last 6-7 months by himself and his counsels, former and current. I believe that he once was looking at a 24 or 36-hour swing through a federal joint, and I think now that potentially could be anywhere between 7 to 14 days. And of course, it would be probably released early on that. But I think Judge Sullivan is not going to respond very well. And realistically, reading the briefs submitted to him, they really didn't come off with any sound legal theory other than the fact that government bad, Flynn screwed, and then they proved none of it. They were looking for other exculpatory evidence to introduce their way into the phase, and that just doesn't happen. Again, this is a guilty plea. It's not a trial. A lot of people confused out there. Michael Flynn will probably have to do a very short stint in prison, may in fact get pardoned before the election. I do not know. That would be a popular pardon for the president to do, and he can certainly bring up a lot of points that were made in the legal documents by Sidney Powell. However, those made no headway with Judge Sullivan, but to the average voter out there, they might think that Michael Flynn was screwed, and there could be a pardon prior even to his reporting for 7 days of prison or whatever it'll be. So certainly not Manafort. Manafort, you may have heard, had a cardiac event. We don't know if that's a heart attack. We don't know what the issues yet. I don't anyway. In prison, he has been transferred to a hospital. If his situation proves dire or serious, then you could look for a pardon at that point from the president and get him home. That would be less. That would certainly not be something he would do until after January. Certainly, I wouldn't pardon Flynn until he wouldn't report probably to prison immediately anyway. So I would wait. If I were Trump, I would wait and get through the January process of impeachment trial in the Senate before I went and pardoned anybody. But hey, that's just me. So, I'm sorry if people are upset about that. I, too, greatly regret the way this all went down for Michael Flynn. It's upsetting, but in the end, many people have gone down this road and many people have been screwed over. And that's what happens. When they make a federal case against you, they will get you 90% of the time plus. It's tough. It's really tough to get out of it, regardless of 302 arguments and all this other stuff. There was nothing exculpatory in there. So really strange demands for Brady material in a guilty plea sentencing here. I mean, just very strange. You could tell how removed intellectually and academically Judge Sullivan was from what he saw provided to him by Sidney Powell. It was not a sound legal basis. It was just strange. So, moving on, I will be on tonight, 10 p.m. YouTube, probably simulcast here on this Periscope channel, but YouTube is our primary broadcasting spot, and that is the MAGA Coalition YouTube channel. If you are not subscribed, please hit MAGA Coalition in the search bar on YouTube and click the little bell and subscribe, and then you'll know when we're on. Typically Tuesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, night live is 11 p.m. Eastern, and then I will jump on intermittently on this channel to do what I just did for the last 30 minutes. So, again, all of the conspiracy theories are wrong. Again, they're all wrong. We're going to have a pretty simple process. 4 or 5 hours of debate, whatever the House rules determines in the next couple hours, and they will be split evenly, and select members will speak on the floor, and then you will see a successful vote on both articles, which will probably garner anywhere between 219 and 224 total. That's all inside baseball. The 30 representatives in the Trump districts will flip and flop on one article and then vote for the other one. You'll see that a lot. That is just horse trading, so they have something to give back to their districts. Thank you to Big Fish for giving us an inside look at the Representative Slotkin's coming home ceremony in Michigan, where she was not well received. And if you do have a congressional member coming home for a town hall, by all means, make up a sign and get in there and get loud. It's what we did in 2010, ballot the Obamacare issue. We protested outside of anyone who voted for it. We organized it from the state party down, that we would have people outside of those offices. Articles will be written about that. If you get 10, 12 people with a couple of signs outside of your congressperson's office and telling them what you think about this, no matter whether they're Democrat or not, you get out there and someone will write an article about it. And this is how you pick up the steam. This is how you get the inertia. And then eventually that grows into the momentum of a backlash. And the backlash, of course, will come in the form of the president being reelected and restoring a majority back to the House and maintaining it in the Senate. So in summation, the House Rules Committee will not change anything other than the technical issues of debate. Debate will probably consist of 4 to 5 hours tomorrow, which is Wednesday, and Trump will be in Michigan on stage, I believe, 7 p.m. that time zone, 8 p.m. my time zone. The vote should be concluded. He should be successfully impeached. By the time he takes the stage, he will be the third president, only the third president to be impeached by the House in the history of our country. And he will take that issue up, I'm sure, in the way that he does. And that'll be a pretty raucous rally in Michigan tomorrow. And then it's all up to the House. Timing-wise, I would suggest that these conspiracy theories about holding the articles back to negotiate with the Senate is silly stuff. It's Larry Tribe nonsense. It's Twitter diarrhea. I would suggest you don't follow people who espouse or engender anything like that. And again, the Senate will use the 99 model. So if you're very curious about the 99 model, then just listen to me tonight at 10 p.m. or Google it and look at it for yourself. I myself am off to Hershey to pick up my 2 beautiful little angels, and I don't think the word impeachment is something that we're going to be covering for a 5 and a 7-year-old, so I will have a nice respite from all of this activity on this front. So appreciate everybody who listened to this little tutorial. I will leave this up on my Twitter timeline. And again, if you don't already, follow us on YouTube, the MAGA Coalition channel. If not, we probably will broadcast on this channel as well. I don't know how long we'll continue to do that, but we'll see. So thanks for checking in, everybody. I'll see you at 10 p.m. tonight.
Thanks for watching the MAGA Coalition channel. Remember to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on to get the best political analysis that is free of clickbait and gaslighting. Because in a world of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act.